Okay guys, so we've been leaders at Deakin for quite some time now, so we're going to do a little activity where we just talk about our experience as leaders. So I've got a few questions here. I'll start with the first question. So what do you think is an effective way to take the focus off you and put it back onto the students? Start with you, Cheryl.
Sure. I think a really good way is moving around the room, particularly if you have a group of students, if you can position yourself so that you're not standing at the front, and makes sure that you're not that prominent person. They're not constantly turning to you for guidance.
Yeah, that's good. And do you have a similar experience as well, Teddy?
In my sessions, I like to split them up into smaller groups where they talk to themselves rather than, and if I have to say something, I would redirect questions from each group to another group. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool. So when you say redirect, what do you mean?
As in a question from a table, I would ask that question to another table.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm not always that middle person who's always the one giving, like, you know, answers or anything. Like, I'm always redirecting the questions to another table.
To other students?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And Joelle, do you do different things or similar?
I like rearranging the class before starting a session so that the students are in smaller groups, and sometimes I even take part in one of the conversations at one table, so the students kind of have a feeling that I'm a student as well because I participate. So yeah, I think that's a good way of taking the focus off the leader.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Lizzie?
I mean, yeah, I guess I do similar things. I often try and remind the students that I'm sort of here just to direct them, just sort of to focus on their own learning. So often I like to sort of stand back, and when they have a conversation and they're discussing things amongst themselves, I pretend I'm not in the room. And then I wait for there to be silence before I join in on everything.
So what is one technique you have used to try to increase students' confidence? Let's start with you, Cheryl.
Sure. One thing I like to do is pick up on things they say. So say if Joelle made a comment, I'd say, I really liked what you said there, Joelle. Would you be able to elaborate more on that? Or even passing it on to Lizzie and saying, I liked what Joelle said. Could you explain that a little bit further? And just praising them for their efforts.
Yeah, I think they're really important things. Praise is really good. I also like students to see that I'm a student as well, so I like to purposely show my faults, not by making mistakes on purpose, like pretending I don't know the answer, but just by relaxing, and if I do make a mistake, making everyone aware so there's room for fault in the room, because that makes them more confident to try and make error.
Yep. And I agree what you said about praising them before. It sort of increases their confidence that they successfully were able to answer a question, or they were able to find some information on the textbook or from the lecture notes, and that will increase their confidence to be able to do that again. Yeah.
I really like to question their answer. So when they don't really seem confident, I'm like, oh, so why do you think you're wrong? So they explain something, and by the end they realize that, okay, they were right. So they tell me the answer again, but with more confidence.
Yeah. And I think through vicarious experience, when one student watches and sees another student be able to find some information or find answers, they feel like they are able to do it themselves as well. So yeah.
And I think also giving students opportunity to be vocal is something that really cements, you know, their knowledge and shows that they have confidence. Because normally in a more formal setting in a lecture, you can't speak up and demonstrate your knowledge. But I think as a student leader, we give them the opportunity to demonstrate what they know, which increases their confidence.
Yeah, and a really effective way is to use the knowledge that they know to be able to apply it to a different scenario that they're not familiar with. So I might ask a question that is based on the same information, but just worded differently, and then if they were able to answer that, it will increase their confidence as well. Yeah.
Cheryl, do you want to take the next question?
Okay.
How do you try to promote independence in students, Lizzie?
I guess as a student leader, that's probably one of the most important things, making a student independent. It comes down to confidence as well. It really does interrelate. I try and make them believe that they are capable of learning independently. So when we're, say, in a study group together and they ask a question, I ask them what would they do at home to find that answer? How would you go about finding that answer? And then they can often sort of talk about, you know, finding resources, contacting people. And I think through giving them confidence and knowledge about how to learn independently, I think that's the best way. I don't know.
That's great. Teddy, do you have anything to add?
Yep, so I like to try to make them be able to find out the answers themselves. So whether it's from the lecture notes or from internet or from asking the lecturers or from their friends. I don't like to, I try not to give them the direct answers or anything. I like them to build their own confidence in being able to find out themselves in independent learning. Yeah.
Joelle. Sorry, last again.
So there's a short activity that I like to do with them. You know, when someone asks a question and the whole class doesn't know the answer, so what I do, I pick a student or maybe 2 or 3 students and I ask them to go back home and look for the answers, and they are responsible to come back in the class and explain to everyone else. And then the next time I pick another group of students so that they are independent and they know how to go home and find the answer by themselves.
That's great.
That's good.
Yeah, big question.
You don't want to.
So, what is one thing that you think a leader, helper, or mentor should never do when working with students? Joelle?
I think if the student gives you an answer and you know it's not the right answer, the one thing you should never do is say, no, you're wrong.
Okay.
Because if you do that, I think the student is not confident in his answers anymore, and he won't be willing to participate the next time.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's...
They might feel embarrassed.
Exactly, yeah.
Lizzie?
Yeah, I agree with Joelle. I think that's a really important one. I think it's also really important that you don't talk at a student. I think you want to sort of talk naturally to them and you want to allow them to respond. If you're constantly talking at them, I think it can create quite negative sort of dictatorship vibes.
Yeah. Sure.
I would say giving out the answers to questions, you really want to help the students find a way to find the answers themselves.
Yeah.
So not just answering questions directly, but asking them a question back. So if they say, what's the answer to this, you might say, where do you think you can find that? Whether it's, textbooks, lectures, asking other friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Teddy?
Well, the leaders shouldn't try to give out the answers directly. They should always try to sort of get the answers from the students first, and if really all else fails, try to give clues or hints and take small steps to try to find the answers, and involve the class and engage them and to try to work together, and be like good role models to them as well.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we also need to remember as student leaders that we're also students.
Yeah.
We're all on the same level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the last one. So this one is in 2 parts. So maybe I'll do the first part. What do you do when a student asks you a question and you don't know the answer? Lizzie?
If I don't know the answer, I'll be honest, straight up, I don't know the answer. But then I'll try and work with them to figure out the answer. So I don't know the answer, what can we do to find the answer together?
Yep.
And then we'll sort of scaffold using different resources. Do you guys do similar things?
Yeah, actually in my sessions there were a few times where I didn't know the answer, and I told them that I'll be really interested to find out as well. So I will ask them whether to find that out from either the internet or from their lectures, and get back to me and get back to the class and share that information.
That's really great. Same with Lizzie. I like to admit that I don't know the answer, being a student as well. I don't know everything. And then working with them to find the answer. So asking, where can you find the resources that you need to find the solution to this?
Yeah, I do the same thing as well. And I think it's really important sometimes to say, oh, I'm not sure about this thing, but let us work together. Because I think we've been talking about independent learners, and I think the whole process of getting to the answer is more important than the actual answer.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think also pretending that you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I know the answer, and then giving them misinformation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you want to do the
Okay,
last
sure.
one?
So what do you do when a student asks you a question and you know the answer?
I think it has to do with
Redirection.
directing as well. Because we're not supposed to give the answers, we're supposed to help them to come with their own answer. So yeah, that's the hardest part, I think.
I think you're at an advantage if you know the answer because you learnt the answer
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
So how did you learn the answer? So you backtrack and you can say, okay, you can direct them towards resources so that they can find the same answer you know. I don't know.
Yeah, similar. Or I might ask one of the other students, do you know the answer? Do you know where to find it? Can you help your friend?
Yeah. And sometimes like some answers require a few thinking steps before you get that answer. So if I know the answer, I'm able to backtrack it, and that's like the starting point of information, like say on the question itself, I can ask them smaller questions that lead up to that final answer. Yeah.
And then what I do as well, I ask them to write down some steps. So if they have a similar question in the future, then they know like the steps will kind of be the same, so they can still use that to get to the answer.
Yeah, and I guess that links back to becoming an independent learner and becoming confident.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all related.
Yeah, all of them related. Cool. So that's our little activity. Now we can go grab a coffee and run off.